Hello, world. My name is Daniel Marnie Elkins, and you are listening to and watching Talk About It, the show in which we dig in to the opioid epidemic and get perspectives from people from various different walks of life. My guest today is Domenica Personti from Impact Life, and we are going to talk about it. Domenica, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much. Thanks for having me.
So, in order to give some context for our viewers, can you tell us a little bit about your background and how you came into the field of prevention?
Sure. So, I entered into the field. I was 19 years old. I had went through a program called the Crest. It's still around. So that was a long time ago, years and years ago. And at the time, as a successful graduate, there was a program that offered scholarship money for individuals to go to school. And I figured there was an area that I was skilled at, which was drugs and alcohol. So why not, go to school and see if I could make a career out of it. I went to school and didn't last very long there. And so shortly after that, they started offering peer programming. So at the time, it wasn't really called a peer. We recognize them as peer support staff now. Back then, you were just somebody that was in recovery. And so they believed that your story was able to inspire hope in others. So they had a program where you could go back in and work in the same program. So I went to a program called the Crest. It was male and female, but in the male prison at Gander Hill at the time, they had a program called the Key Program. And so they hired me as a key counselor, and I started working there. And at the time, my main driver was my significant other was in recovery and had went through that program, graduated successfully. And there was just a lot of people that I knew that had struggled with drugs and alcohol, and I just wanted to try and help and be a little bit of a pillar. So that was really on the treatment side. Over the course of time, the longer that I worked into the field, the more I kind of became very passionate about it. And obviously it's something near and dear to me. I'm a person in long-term recovery. So always just something that I wanted to do to give back. And so I went back to school. I got my bachelor's degree in human services with a criminal justice focus. And then I got a master's degree in clinical mental health counseling, forensic mental health counseling. And then after I graduated with my master's degree, that's kind of when we started to really see the shift from treatment to really including prevention. I went through the crack cocaine epidemic, right? I grew up in that. And then when the opiate epidemic hit, I was working at an MAT program. And it was crazy. We had people that were coming in, and if you looked at the data, so there was about 500 clients, and about 80% of them were coming in using heroin. And over the course of 2.5 years, just like that, it shifted to 80% of them using pills.
So, just for our viewers, for clarification, what does MAT stand for?
Medication-assisted treatment.
Okay, perfect.
Yep, and now it's actually called Medications for Opiate Use Disorder, MOUD. The field shifts a lot, but people still recognize it by MAT. But at the time, that's when we started to really look at prevention, because you saw the pharmaceutical side of addiction, and prior to that, it was illicit heroin use, right? So it was like, okay, well, how do we get in front of it? We went from 500 clients to 1,600 clients in about that same time frame, 2.5, 3 years. So it's like, okay, well, we're waiting until people get to a point where they're addicted, and then we're diving in and almost drowning ourselves, right? Trying to help them, versus like, let's get in front of this, and how can we go to the front of the line and educate people so that hopefully they don't get to this state of dependence, even really extensive use that maybe doesn't lead to to dependence, but has a whole lot of negative consequences.
So when we first met, you were working at Brandywine Community Counseling Services, doing Narcan and naloxone trainings in the community, and now you are sort of the force behind the Impact Life movement.
Yeah,
Can you tell me a little bit about Impact
sure.
Life and what it does in the community?
Sure. So I actually left and worked out of state for about 6 years in 2016. So I left for a few years, worked for a large organization called Recovery Centers of America. And when I was there, I oversaw 2 different inpatient detox programs, and I also managed outpatient programs from here to Massachusetts.
Mm-hmm.
So I worked across multiple states. And then when COVID hit, I'm working in Maryland and Pennsylvania and New Jersey and Massachusetts, and but I'm coming home every day and I'm seeing how hard Delaware is being hit because everyone knows, right? Our numbers of overdoses in general and then overdose fatalities are through the roof. So, it's an odd feeling, right, to be working and serving another state and then coming home to your own state and seeing all the suffering that's happening here. So what was happening was, again, I've worked in the field. It'll be 25 years next year. And so I was getting calls, and what we started to notice as a pattern was that people couldn't access the hospitals for treatment when they were going through withdrawal or trying to stop using because the hospitals were overrun with COVID. So Leslie Paldino, who's one of my employees, Nick Gregory, who's one of my employees, we kind of got together and brainstormed, and we were like, what can we do? So we started trying to meet people where they were. So where are you? We'll meet you there, and we'll help triage you and get you to treatment wherever you're at, because the hospitals were just unable to do it. And so we were doing that voluntarily for about 3-4 months, just answering the calls and going wherever we needed to be. Meanwhile, all of us had full-time jobs. So when the CARES money came out and they were like, we need people to help, we were like, well, how can we be of service as individuals who work full-time elsewhere? So it was like, okay, let's see if maybe we can hire one person and let's do a vaccine campaign and let's do some healthcare navigation, behavioral healthcare navigation. And we got a $182,000 grant, and that was the very first grant we got. And it kind of pushed us into action. It was like the help that we needed to get off the ground. And so not long after that, Don Keister, who's the founder and the board president for Attack Addiction, approached us. They had some recovery houses they wanted some assistance running. And so at the time, there were 3 houses, and we said yes, of course.
Mm-hmm.
I hired Leslie full time, and she kind of ran Impact by herself for about a year.
Mm-hmm.
So we were doing healthcare navigation and we were doing housing. So that was in early 2021.
Mm-hmm.
We got our nonprofit status. And then we wrote some grants, and we were awarded a lot of them. And so we grew to today we have 49 full-time employees,
Mm-hmm.
which is crazy over the course of, 2 years. About 80% of our staff are in recovery. And we pride ourselves on being able to adequately employ people in recovery, because there's a big responsibility in employing peers.
Yeah, absolutely.
There's a different set of, I believe, approaches and principles that you have to follow in order to support them in a way that, dignifies them, right, and shows them compassion. And so we work really hard at that. And then so we got a big harm reduction grant. It was one of 24 that was awarded in the whole country. And that kind of kicked us off to do a lot of what we're doing now, which is street outreach